My father owns 34 acres of woodland just 1 hour north of the city. It had always been a safe haven of our own for my family. We used to spend many of our vacations there, just chilling and camping in the forest. That's also where I picked up hunting. My dad was a strict teacher for that. With time, as we grew up, our family trips to the woods slowly came to a stop, but that did not stop us from visiting there in our own time. In my spare time, especially during the fall season, I would usually get a week away from my desk job in the city and take to those woods for some good old-fashioned hunting. My best friends, Aaron and Bobby, would be the only ones to usually go along with me. They had grown up with me, accompanied me on many of those trips when we were younger. They had grown up hunting on my father's land too, even when all of us lived in the inner city. And now the family trips had turned into just friends trips away for a week or so, especially when father had built a cabin in the woods just before I moved out when I was coming out of college. So since then, we always managed to sync up our schedules during the fall, made sure to get that trip in despite our usual busy lives. It gave us an ample opportunity to distress and bond. That fall, too, my father left the cabin to me as he set off over to Paris with his new girlfriend for the next few weeks. I hit up the boys and we made the plans. They were immediately on board and we set out on our way. Bobby and I lived closer, so we decided to leave for the woods together from the city. We arrived earlier to the cabin and Aaron was supposed to come in the next morning. Usually we would all be there together around this time, but Aaron was coming together with his brother Dallas. Bobby and I decided to just rest and chill for the day and started on hunting the next day when our companions would come by. Just sitting there and chilling brought around some long ago memories for me. I remembered how, as a kid, growing up whenever I visited, I used to hear strange sounds deep in the woods. Those voices sure scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. That was also when I came across many stories and history of the place. My father had initially picked up the land pretty cheap back in the 20s, and even then the locals used to say that these grounds were known to be haunted. That's why not many people were willing to buy it. But my father never really listened to those people and their theories about hauntings. I got the same attitude towards paranormal things from my father. I never paid those tales any mind. But I was going to be proven possibly wrong sometime in the near future, and I did not even know about it just yet. I was going to wish that I had paid those stories some heed. The next day, Aaron and his brother showed up pretty early in the morning. We had the whole day ahead of us, so instead of wasting any time, we decided to set up for our very first hunt in months. We got everything ready and set out to the thick forest. The place we knew housed many wild animals. We had our minds set on hunting deer though, no rabbits or even pigs for the day at least. It was proven to be more difficult than we had anticipated or even encountered before. We were already hours into the deer hunt, but there were still no sightings of any deer whatsoever. We were just thinking about changing our direction and looking into another area when suddenly Bobby finally spotted a deer walking off into the thick trail. We took to following that deer slowly and surely. We did not want to lose it into the woods, but we also didn't want to take any immature shots just in case it got spooked and ran away before we could hit it. But no matter how hard we tried, we just couldn't get a good shot at it, and it was proven to be pretty quick on its feet. Fortunately, after a while, the deer slowed to a stop just near some bushes and a very clear view, the perfect distance away for a perfect shot. Unfortunately, just as I was ready to finally get a shot in, Dallas chose that precise moment to stumble over a fallen branch and fall. Quite loudly, I might say. The deer, sensing disturbance, got spooked off into the thick of trees once again. All of us were left staring at the sprightly thing disappeared from our sight, not believing the luck we were just served with. We all turned to look at Dallas after that, incredulous at his less than impeccable timing. He turned to look back with just a look of "my bad" on his face. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. Oh, damn, I'm clumsy, he supplied, looking genuinely apologetic. Bobby was the one who answered from all of us. He just walked over to Dallas and hit him over the head with his hat. Ah, damn you, you idiot! You just cost us a good kill, dude! What the hell, man? Where the hell were you even looking? I should have just left you back at Mom's house, man. He kept berating him lightly while also helping him stand back up. We were all focused on Dallas now, just checking him over to make sure he hadn't really hurt himself in the fall, and the deer was all but forgotten for the moment. We all knew with experience anyway that we wouldn't be able to get that particular deer anymore. They ran like hell when they felt they were in danger, so we would have to begin our hunt from the start once again. As we were thinking about where to move next, a loud crash was suddenly heard in the thick woods, shocking us all. We quickly turned around in the direction where the crash had come from, with surprise painted on our faces. We were not expecting that noise, especially when we were not expecting anyone else to be out there in the woods at this moment. It was my dad's private property after all, and as far as I knew, he hadn't let anyone else stay out there. He knew we were going to be there for the whole week, so the situation did not call for some random crashes and bangs from within the forest. There must be some kind of intruder in the woods. All of us turned towards each other, seemingly coming to the same conclusion, and took to running towards the area the loud noise had originated from. It was the thickest part of the woods, and I was pretty sure that none of us had ever stepped in there before, or at least not that I had remembered. Our run-in came to an abrupt halt when we came across something that none of us could even explain. It was something we couldn't have even imagined before, something that seemed very out of place and spooky at the same time. All of us just stood there, surprised, as we watched a man in old clothing dragging the deer into an abandoned house, the same deer we had been following earlier. The old man had gotten to it when we weren't able to do so, and I had no idea who that man was. I was pretty sure he wasn't just some property manager or caretaker as my father would have told me if he had arranged for someone to do so, and he would have been around our cabin, not miles into the uncharted woods. And he himself, as well as the house he was seemingly living in, did not seem to be in a new condition or anything. In fact, they were pretty old, as if lost in time or something. Both of them, the man and the house, must have made the place a home years ago, if not decades ago. All these years visiting this property, living there, exploring it, and through it all, I'd never noticed any other house on our property before, except the cabin my father had built there. It seemed like Bobby had come to the same conclusion. He turned towards us and opened his mouth to definitely say something, but his something was cut short, however, when Dallas quickly bucked and pulled on Bobby's jacket, signaling him to keep his trap shut.
"Shut the hell up, you fool! All of you! Duck down before he sees any of us!"
He furiously muttered and ducked down himself, taking us all with him and hid behind the bushes. There was definitely some rustling of the bushes when all of us proceeded to practically drop ourselves in there, and that rustling was loud enough to reach the old man's ears. It caused the strange man to stop what he was doing, dragging that huge deer to his cabin, and look back towards the place we was hiding. We instinctively held our breaths, so as not to attract any more attention than what we already had, and kept on waiting until the old man would turn around and leave. Even though the man kept looking in our direction for a few seconds, we could not see his face clearly. Eventually, though, the man turned away from us once again. He must not have seen us or sensed us. And really, we were in the forest. There were bound to be many wild animals around anyway, so he must have thought there was just some rabbit or something hiding in the shrubs, and decided not to pursue the commotion any further. We all waited with bated breaths until the man walked into the half-standing, half-destroyed house, and we all let out a collective sigh of relief that we didn't even know we were holding. We still stayed down there for a while, just trying to make sure that the man wouldn't be coming out of the crumbling house anytime soon. After we were sure that we were safe, Aaron quickly stood up from where we was crouching and looked at the house one last time and turned towards us.
I don't know what or who he is or what the hell is going on here, but I do not wish to end up like that deer, so I'm out of here.
He let out a whisper that was still almost like shouting at us, then promptly proceeded to run past us. All the rest of us was left scrambling after him, having come to the same conclusion ourselves. No one wanted to be left behind there in such close proximity to the weird man. It took us some time to find our way and get back to the cabin. The hunting was nowhere on our minds anymore. It was basically forgotten. We were all wondering about the strange old man and the debilitating house in the thick of the woods, standing inconspicuously since God knows how long. Later that day, after we were finally back in the cabin and weren't in a state of shock or sudden fear we had been in earlier, we had got to talking about that encounter once again. Our curiosity had instead taken place of fear. All of us were now itching to investigate and get to the bottom of it. The man, the house, the purpose of it all. We were all thinking of it anyway, but eventually Dallas said it out loud and talked us into sneaking back to that old house in the dead of night. According to him, it would be a good adventure and might even prove a good investigative material for the outside world. He was of the opinion that it would be a good scoop if we could at least get some pictures in or around that creepy house. With that, it was decided that we would head to the house during the night. Bobby was the first one to stand up when it was time to go, along with his rifle he held proudly in his hands. His action was not met with much enthusiasm, however. I was one of the same thought that we should bring along our weapons, but Dallas and Aaron were in favor of not taking our guns with us. They just wanted to take our cameras with us instead. I don't know what we're about to walk into, but I'm not about to find out the messy way, said Aaron. Besides, what if the old man spots us and takes offense to the fact that we brought weapons to his house? Reasoned Dallas. All valid points, so the idea of weapons was also dropped out. Later that night, we all took towards the old man's house, just to check it out at first and not carry any guns towards him. It was even harder to find that time around. The most important reason was it being the dead of night. It was dark. Like, really, really dark. You couldn't see the moon and there wasn't a star in the sky, so we had to take flashlights along with us to better see our surroundings and our way. Finally, we reached near the ruined house and began to observe. One of the windows was pretty big and was made even huge due to the broken wall beside it, but even through the window, we couldn't see where the old man was. But we definitely could see the dead body of the deer laying on the kitchen table, half ripped open. It was a horrifying sight, and still Aaron wanted to have a little bit more of it. We were all left to try and stop him from making any hasty decisions. We wanted to look around a little more and get a better reading of our surroundings, but it was to no avail. He straight up walked up to the window and started looking right into the house. The rest of us stayed a safe distance away, out of sight. We watched as an arm suddenly burst out from the window Aaron was peeking through and snatched him right up. The arm then proceeded to pull him up and into the house through the window, like he was nothing more than a ragged doll. We all ran over to the window on instinct, shouting and crying out in shock at the sudden turn of events. We got there in time to see the strange tall man slam Aaron onto the same table and raise a blade. With one clear motion, he severed his head right in front of our eyes, while we were just left to scream in terror. Bobby jumped up at once, trying to get into the window, but he couldn't.
No! I'll show you something!
He shouted and ran away from the house, and the rest of us were quick on his tail. We all raced back to the cabin to call the police for help, only to find out that the phone had no dial tone, which shouldn't have been possible. The phone was working just fine the last night when we had contacted Aaron and his brother. I looked down at the phone jack and noticed that the wire had been cut. It was a clean cut, so it wouldn't have been an accident. This had been cut intentionally. That's when we realized the strange man wasn't unaware of our presence as we had previously thought. We quickly locked all the doors and bunkered down all the windows and gathered into the living room with our guns near. We couldn't fathom what had just transpired in such a short amount of time. We had come here for some deer hunting, and now it turned into us being hunted down instead. Over the next 3 days, we stayed locked in that cabin without any food available, and our bodies started to break down. There wasn't even much drinkable water there, so we were rationing it strictly. After 3 days of no food, Dallas suddenly stood up, looking very upset, and practically yelled in frustration.
Someone please tell me who didn't check the place for any food?
We came here to hunt, so we were supposed to get the food that way. But no, replied Bobby, shrugging.
Well then I'm going hunting. I can't stay here just starving anymore,
said Dallas, and immediately rushed outside. We were left yelling after him to stop, but he didn't listen to us at all. Soon enough, we could hear his distant screaming, and then there was just silence once again. Bobby and I looked at each other tiredly, but neither of us had the energy or the courage to get up and investigate. We accepted it as fate and let it go. The next day, I was in the bathroom washing my face when I heard Bobby screaming bloody murder, as if someone had scared him crazy. I quickly ran out only to see that he wasn't in the cabin anymore. I ran out of the cabin and saw the tall stranger dragging him into the thick forest. I just stood there, shocked and scared, until I saw him walk off into the woods and disappear from sight. It was not good. I was the only one left of our group of 4, and it did not sit well with me. I wanted to see for myself if all my friends were lost at the hands of this old man, or if I could still save someone. So I decided to quietly head over to the old house and snoop around. After my thorough exam, I spotted another window that was half open. In fact, perfectly open for me to creep inside. So I braved myself and stepped into the house, trying not to be loud and be as discreet as possible. Upon entering, I found myself in the kitchen, the same kitchen where we had seen the old deer lying on the table. There was almost no flesh left on the body. I quickly walked into the living room and saw all my friends' heads hanging from the wall, as if they weren't living beings just a while ago and were just some kind of trophies. They were fully covered in blood, some fresh, some old and already dried. It was a nauseating sight. I backed up, almost tripping over a music box that was lying there on the floor. And as I was backing up, I turned around and saw the dark figure as he reached out to strike me with a short sword to cut off my head.